Welcome back to the Kentuckiana Hoops podcast. I'm Noah Bridenstine.
And I'm Cole Thompson. This is Cole Thompson.
And I'm Noah Bridenstine.
Thank you for listening to the Kentuckiana Hoops podcast. For the rest of summer, we will have a new podcast coming out every Monday and Friday. Follow us on our social media pages, Twitter at KYIN Hoops, Instagram at Kentuckiana Hoops, and check out our website at www.kentuckianahoops.net.
What's up, Coach? How are you?
Hello. Good. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm excited to have you on the podcast.
Okay. Sounds great, man.
All right, so we start every podcast with the same question. If we were to take you out on the golf course, what would you shoot?
84.
Pretty good. I think you'd probably beat anybody we've had on the podcast so far.
Well, it depends on the course, but I think I could go out and shoot an 84 without having to use my foot wedge at all.
Okay, Coach, so to hop into the podcast, our first question for you is, so you're a proud Wagner High School alumni. What was your time like at Wagner, and how were you as a player there?
Well, it's hard to remember back that long ago. I'm 53 now, so that's quite a while. But, Wagner was a great school. I loved it. I was glad I went there. Got to play basketball. Got cut my freshman year. Got to play basketball my sophomore, junior, and senior year. And I wasn't a great basketball player. I mean, I played JV the sophomore and junior year, played a little varsity junior year, and then senior year I started probably half the time as captain, but I don't think I averaged more than 3 points a game. So I was a guy that played hard, hustled, took charges, and dove on the floor.
Sounds like me.
Very similar. You're more skilled, though.
Thanks, Coach. I appreciate it.
All right.
After you graduated from Wagner, you attended U of L and coached Westport Middle. Was coaching basketball always your end goal, or did you fall in love with it while coaching middle school?
It was my junior year in high school, sitting on the bench. After the dream of wasn't going to be an NBA basketball player kind of started to sink in. I just kind of realized at that point I wanted to be a coach. Really felt like I was learning a lot while I was sitting on the bench and watching the game, and loved it. I just wasn't as skilled as everybody else, and the game was a lot different back then, and how you developed and the opportunities that exist now just didn't exist back then for players.
So you said you fell in love with coaching. So growing up in Louisville, who were your coaching idols and your biggest influences?
Well, I think obviously anytime you play the game, the people that coach you, you are going to have an influence, whether it's positive or negative at times. And my dad was the person that coached me in church ball, so he kind of introduced me to the game the most. And then, as I started to play high school ball, and those coaches, and then I was a big University of Louisville basketball fan, and so for me, watching Denny Crum coach in the Cardinals, and so I would sit at home and I would draw up the Louisville plays, and I would watch UK basketball and draw up the UK plays with Joby Hall, and I just kind of fell in love with that. And then basically it was my freshman year of college, my high school coach offered or said that Westport Middle School was looking for a coach, and so he said, hey, if you're interested, go check it out. And I did. I was a freshman at college and went and interviewed and got the job, and I did that for 2 years, and really started to fall in love with coaching at that point, and knew that's kind of what God wanted me to do.
After you graduated from U of L, you went on to be a student assistant at UT Martin. What was it like working in Division I basketball and for Coach Cal Luther?
So I was offered the graduate assistant job at UT Martin after I had been a varsity coach for a year. And initially I turned it down, but then I decided it's what I wanted to do. And I always wanted to be a college coach. That was my goal. And so I was able to do that for 2 years, and I learned a lot from Cal Luther, and we were at the Division I level, and he gave me a lot of responsibility. I loved going out scouting. I got to go to Alabama, Tennessee, different places, and throughout the conference and go scout. I loved that. And I was offered a position after I graduated. My graduate assistant job was over with, but I just decided it was time to come back home. I saw the good and the bad of college basketball, realized I didn't want to be in that cutthroat business, wanted to come back home and have more of an influence on younger kids as opposed to college kids. But it was a great experience for me.
Oh, no doubt. So in 1996, you got the job at your alma mater, Wagner. What was it like coming back to Louisville and being the head coach at a place where you played your high school ball at?
when I came back to Louisville, there weren't any jobs available, and I didn't get anything other than a girls' basketball job at Christian Academy. And then when the Wagner job opened up, that was kind of one of my goals, was obviously to get back into boys' basketball and Louisville. And with my alma mater coming up, it's something I wanted to do, was be the head coach there. And so it was great to go back. There were still teachers there that were teaching when I was a student. Just the familiarity and the opportunity to just be the head coach at Wagner was something that was really special to me. And those were a couple great years, and I didn't want to leave, but better opportunity opened up, and I'm glad I pursued it.
And going into that, after 2 years at Wagner, you got the opportunity to take the Ballard job. What was so appealing about the opportunity at Ballard?
Well, the job came up, and I applied for it, and I had an interview on a Saturday morning, and it was the night before, and I told my wife, I said, I'm not going to go to the interview. I said, I hate Ballard, never liked them. They were always a rival. When I say rival, I mean they just used to beat the brains out of us at Wagner, never beat them. And so I just didn't want to go put the Ballard jersey on if I got offered the job. And she persuaded me to do it to see what happens, and I went, got offered the job, talked to my athletic director, Bob Stewart, at Wagner, and said, hey, what do you think? And he was like, look, Chris, an opportunity like this doesn't come along very often, and you got to take advantage of it. And so took the job, and from the first day I saw the players and the school and met everybody, fell in love with it. And I didn't think I'd be there for 22 plus years, but it's been a great situation, and I'm so blessed that my wife forced me to interview at least.
Yeah, that's definitely been a good situation for you. And in year one, you won the state championship for the third time in school history. What was different with the team from others that you've gotten close to?
In terms of the championship team, different than the ones of our runner-up teams?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, when we took over the job at Ballard, they had the size, and so we really tried to focus on an inside game. A lot of the guys were spending more time on the perimeter, and so we really tried to have an identity defensively, a good man-to-man defense, and offensively really focus on our 6'5", 6'8", and 6'9" basketball players. And so, I really that year didn't think that was the year we were going to win the championship. I felt like our talent was better with the younger group, and all those big kids were coming back in the majority. And so I really thought that the second or third year were going to be our best teams. But it just so happened that things worked out the way it did. We had great leadership. Our seniors played a tremendous role. To win a championship, there's a lot of luck that goes into it. There's a lot of times that the ball bounced our way that year that easily could have bounced the other way, and that happened in some other games. Happened in regional games 2 years after the championship, and it happened in state tournament games. So there's a lot of luck that goes into winning a championship. You got to put yourself in position as a team to do it, but when it comes down to it, sometimes the ball just bounces the other way.
Yeah, for sure. In over 20 years at Ballard, you have had a lot of success. What are a few reasons you've been able to maintain such a high level of success for over 2 decades?
One of the keys is a consistent coaching staff, and there's no head coach at any level that can do it all and can maintain a level of success for an extended period of time without great assistance. And so even though we've had some different assistants come and go, we've had a good consistency with our staff and guys that have been around for a long time, and we know each other and have the same philosophies and work well together. The other part is, Ballard is really just a special and unique school. And so when you have a school like Ballard that can offer the tremendous academics, you've got fantastic teachers, there are so many positives to sell about the school that it's not super difficult to try and attract good talent to come to Ballard High School. And then, some other things are that, we've adjusted over the years in terms of some offensive or defensive styles, but in general, we try and play fast offensively, give players freedom to shoot the basketball and create offensively. And defensively, we just try and use our athleticism to just, cause teams to struggle with pressure. You do have to make adjustments throughout time, but I think those are, some key factors that have allowed us to be successful. Now, I'm not going to say year in and year out we're better than everybody else. There's some fantastic coaches in the city of Louisville and throughout the state. But I would also say that not many people have done it better than we've done it at Ballard. And I'll also say that the tradition that was established prior to me getting to Ballard was huge. When you talk about the great coaches like Richard Smith, Don Salyer, Scotty Davenport, Jeff Morrow, who were there, they laid a really good foundation for the program that just was allowed us to continue that tradition.
Yeah. Over your time at Ballard, you've had a lot of great players such as Quentin Snyder, Keelan Martin, Devontae Parker, Brandon Bender, and countless others. What makes your program appealing to those players, and what is something that players get when they get to play for you?
Well, yeah, definitely been blessed to have a lot of great basketball players and talent come through our program. And again, Ballard had that prior to Coach Renner getting there. I think, the one thing that I hear a lot of those guys say in terms of talking to them after playing for Ballard is just the opportunity that they have and the freedom that they have to play the game. We try and run sets, and we have a lot more structure than people understand or will give us credit for if you look at our defensive and offensive breakdowns. But at the same time, we believe in giving the players freedom to make plays. I mean, if you watch an NBA basketball game, you might see them do a bunch of different movements, and what's going to happen is the ball's going to get in the best player's hands, and he's going to have to make a play. And that's what we try and allow our players to do. And I think when you give players the freedom to play like that, they enjoy it. And then also when you give them the offensive freedom to play with confidence and an opportunity to shoot the basketball, then at the defensive end, they're willing to work a little bit harder. So I think most of the guys would say that they really have enjoyed that opportunity to have that freedom to play a fast style of basketball, not play a game in the 40s and 50s. That's not fun for a lot of people, even though you got to do it sometimes as a coach and as a team to win. Most people would rather play the game getting up and down and with a lot of shots and playing in transition.
Yeah, for sure. And another one, Coach, is we talked about the players you've coached and all the players that have came through Ballard. So who would be your all-time starting five?
Wow, it's funny you ask that question because a lot of times we'll sit around as coaches and have that discussion. And, it's tough to say that. I mean, Brandon Bender, when I first got there, was a phenomenal player and the top-rated player in the country. At 6'9", he was just a force down low, and so it's hard to not say they have a great team without Brandon, and he was super unselfish as a basketball player. You look at Keelan Martin right now playing for the Minnesota Timberwolves. I mean, it'd be hard to keep him out, and Keelan was a young man that when he came to Ballard, he just needed to continue to grow and develop, and so it's just great to see what he's doing right now. You look at the leading scorer in Ballard history, Quentin Snyder. There's no way I could leave Quentin off that starting five. Devontae Parker was a lot better basketball player than people give him credit for. He was close to being a Mr. Basketball in the state of Kentucky, and so he was a guy that could play point guard, could rebound, could do a variety of different things, and so you got to keep him on the floor there. And then one other player that it's interesting. He was on one of my earlier teams, and after we had lost to Mason County in the state finals in 2003, my wife asked me, said, "Hey, if you had one player from your previous teams and you could put him on the floor, now to beat Mason County, who would it be?" And I said, a player named Antoine Sarton. And Antoine was just a lockdown defender. We traveled around the country. Antoine was a guy that could stop anybody across the country, whether it was big man or guard. And so, sometimes when you're filling out a team like that, you want someone who can do the dirty work, a role player. And so, I'm not going to put Antoine over a bunch of other great players because I'm not going to say anything about those guys. But Antoine was definitely a guy that was a winner and makes teams a lot better.
After all your experience as a head coach, what are a few things you've learned while coaching at the highest level of high school basketball, not only in the state of Kentucky, but in the nation?
I think in a lot of times my earlier teams, whether it was from Wagner, whether it was from my girls at Christian Academy, whether it's my early teams at Ballard, a lot of them would say that I'm softer now than I was. It's as the game of basketball has evolved in a lot of different ways. It's more of a dribble drive game. It's more of attack off of the bounce. The dribbler is harder to guard now. And there's a lot of things about the game of basketball and just society that you can't do things sometimes the way you used to do them. And so, I hear a lot of my guys say that I'm probably softer now. And you could use that word, maybe softer. I'd probably be fired for a lot of things that I did previously with some of my basketball teams. But I think sometimes as you get older, you get a little bit wiser. One thing that has changed for me as a parent, once you become a parent and you're coaching, you realize, hey, maybe I should have or could do things a little bit different. Been blessed to travel around the country and play a lot of great teams, playing the biggest events in the country. And, it was my third year at Ballard. We were traveling up to Delaware in a slam dunk to the beach tournament. We were playing Willow Ridge, Texas for basically the number one spot in the country at that time. And actually it was my second year at Ballard. And so, those first 3 years, we were top 25 in the country, and it was great to travel around the country and see great players and see great basketball teams and see great coaches. And so, I've been lucky, too, that I've built a lot of relationships with a lot of top coaches in the state of Kentucky that were older than me. When you look at Billy Hicks and you look at the great Bobby Keith that was at Clay County, there's just Dale Mabry at PRP. These guys were very gracious to me, spent time talking to me about the game of basketball. And I think any coach who's worth a darn at whatever level has picked the brain of coaches that are better or know just as much about the game of basketball. And so I think those are things that, as a young coach, someone who's young, I would say, hey, don't be afraid to ask and talk to the older coaches who have been doing this for a long time, because they know a lot what they're talking about. And I was lucky to have that opportunity.
So this past season, you had a very talented team and won the King of the Bluegrass and the LIT. What did you feel like your guys did well, and what was something you wish you could have done differently?
Well, we to be honest with you, the up until the last probably 2 weeks of the season, I mean, this team exceeded what I thought it could do. You never, as a coach, want to put your team in a box and say, well, this is all they can do. But, you look at what you've got and you say, okay, let's project what we think they can do. And when you've been at a school like Ballard and played so many LITs and won championships, and you got a good feel for it. But, with us starting 2 freshman guards, having Maker, who this was his first time ever playing organized basketball, it was uncertain that we could really go into a King of the Bluegrass or the LIT and win that. But the guys really played super well together. The freedom that we gave them, they were able to make plays. They defended. And we had great senior leadership, and that's the one thing. We might not have had any Division I players with our senior class. Well, we did. Josh Minkins is a football player. But all of those seniors just played such an important role for our basketball team, whether it was in practice, whether it was the minutes they got during the game, or whether it was the guys sitting on the bench that were super supportive. Guys on the bench can be cancerous for a basketball team. So I think when you've got a total group that is bought in, then you can do some special things. And, it's tough to maintain that. That's the tough thing about basketball in the city of Louisville, that, when you're playing in big Christmas events, and then you got the LIT coming up, and you got to be ready for that. And then all of a sudden, you got the battles you're facing throughout the year, and then it's regional time. It's hard to sustain that. And when you're at a school like Ballard High School, where everybody's shooting for you, when you look at the last, prior to even me getting there, when you look at the history of Ballard High School, the one thing that is always constant in every regional tournament is Ballard High School. It's been Ballard and Mayo this past year. It used to be Ballard and Trinity. It was Ballard and Eastern. It was Ballard and J-Town. It was Ballard and Mayo before that. And you go back to it, Ballard's always in the mix. And when that's the case, you got teams shooting for you. And that's tough when you got the bullseye on you every night.
you kind of hit on how you had Maker was playing his first organized basketball last year, and you started Gabe and Jack, who were both freshmen. With those guys coming back next year with more experience, what do you expect for the team next year?
Well, it's always great when you've got your most talented players returning, and that's not knocking the senior class, but when you look at recruitment and you look at the level that individuals are able to play at when they're done at the high school level, Maker, Gabe, and Jack are three guys that have a chance to play at a very high level of basketball. You're starting to see right now the offers that Maker is getting, and when you've got a player 6'9" like Maker, 6'10", that can do so much, has perimeter skills, plus can score down low, is a great defender. That's a guy that can impact the game in a lot of different ways. And so, the fact that we've got three key pieces coming back are tremendous. The fact that we got some really good younger talent as well that played JV that maybe didn't get as many varsity minutes last year. So, again, there's great coaches in the city of Louisville. There's some really good teams for the next 2 to 3 years in the city of Louisville besides Ballard High School. So it's not going to be easy, but the fact that we've got talent there definitely gives us a chance to win another regional championship.
And all right, we've got one more question for you. If someone watches one of your practices, what are one or two things you want them to leave thinking?
Well, hopefully it's not that I say some bad words too much. Hopefully that's definitely one thing that's calmed down over the years. You might not believe that, but I think if somebody's going to come watch practice, I want to see that the kids are number one getting coached. That it's not just me. That the coaches are helping coach all of the players in practice. But at the same time, I also want to see the kids playing hard. That's if I'm going to walk into a practice, days are different, whether it's a pregame preparing for a game or whether it's the day after a game, whether it's preseason, whether it's postseason. You're going to adjust your practices based upon the time of the season. But, one thing that if it's a legit practice and we're not preparing for the game tomorrow, then I want to see our guys getting after it. I want to see it competitive. I want to see them playing hard. And that's the hardest part. It really is. And to get kids to truly play hard. Coaches will say, hey, I want you to play hard. But when it comes down to it, they're going to play with, most kids think playing hard is playing with good effort. But to really play the game of basketball, you got to play with exceptional effort. And so if you're going to come to my practice, I want to see, I want you to walk away and say, man, those guys play with exceptional effort.
Yeah, that's awesome. We appreciate you for being on the podcast. And if there's anything else you want to say about your program or yourself, now's the time.
No, I think it's all good, man.
Okay. Thank you for being on the podcast. We appreciate it, Coach.
Hey, thanks, Noah. Thanks, Cole.
This is Cole Thompson.
And I'm Noah Breitenstein.
Thank you for listening to the Kentuckiana Hoops podcast. For the rest of summer, we will have a new podcast coming out every Monday and Friday. Follow us on our social media pages, Twitter at KYINHoops, Instagram at Kentuckiana Hoops, and check out our website at www.kentuckianahoops.net.
To get full access to the site, it costs just $10 a month, and you get to see our 2021 through 2024 boys and girls watch lists and player profiles, along with numerous other member-exclusive services.